Cool. So yeah. I guess just to kick off, what we're here to talk about today then is obviously accessibility and inclusivity in learning design. So just to kick things off with accessibility in mind, I'm going to share a little QR code here. If you want to scan that with your mobile devices, that's going to link you to just a short glossary of terms. So just in case there's any sort of vocabulary that you guys may not be familiar with today, shouldn't be, but let's again, in the spirit of accessibility, that might help some of the people in here today. I'm going to post that in the chat as well, just the link to it, so you can access that too. So I'll leave that there. But so what we're talking about today, so we're going to look at just to let you know what we're going to run through. We're going to look at inclusivity, I guess, primarily in the terms of Welsh language. ACT take a fully bilingual approach when we do our curriculum design. So we're going to look at inclusivity primarily in terms of the Welsh language, and we'll look at accessibility then in terms of our universal learning provision as well. So in particular, we're going to focus on the practical application of these when we're designing and delivering learning using Microsoft PowerPoint. At the end of this time, we'll briefly look a little bit at e-learning design and the considerations to take into account in that area as well. So I'll leave that QR code up just in case people are still trying to access. But I guess just to kick things off, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Sam Holland. I'm the Curriculum Development Manager here at ACT. So I manage a small team of curriculum developers who are basically in place to ensure that we're giving the learners the best possible learning experience, that our learning resources are nicely designed, that they're sleek, they're dynamic, they're interactive, and they're useful for both learners and delivery staff as well. Those of you who aren't familiar with ACT, we're Wales's leading training provider. We deal in apprenticeships, we do traineeships, which is our Jobs Growth Wales Plus provision, so working with young people 16 to 19, and we also have a private schools division. So my team work right across the organisation, dealing with a number of different qualifications and sectors. So it's quite a nice sort of varied role. The curriculum team, I suppose, again, when we're one of the focus points that we have is, I guess, the way that we think about this is that our learners, particularly the young people coming up, and so these are young people who are moving into the workforce, they're savvy when it comes to design. So they've grown up in a world where digital design is of the absolute utmost importance. So whether we're looking at instructional design and designing for learning, user experience design, learning experience design, accessibility and inclusivity for all is absolutely vital to the access of any learning experience, really. So we've got these 5 badges here that you can see, and we kind of use these as, I suppose, helpful reminders for us to ensure that our learning resources are the best that they can be, and that we're keeping our values in mind, if you like. So I'll just very, very briefly run you through the way that we approach it with these badges. So the first one here that you can see is denotes health and well-being. So we try and embed health and well-being by doing things like giving opportunities for reflection and self-evaluation and things like that. Obviously using content warnings and trigger warnings if we're, quite often we will be teaching, areas which might be problematic to some learners. So we do try and embed those sorts of things as well. The next button there you can see is Welsh language and culture. So we, again, as I've sort of mentioned already, we do try and operate it with a fully bilingual approach, and I'll demonstrate that a little bit further as we go on as well. The third bubble there is denotes digital inclusion. Obviously, we work in apprenticeships, so that's work-based learning, and since COVID, we're many of us, most of us even, maybe work in a hybrid environment. So it's my opinion that learning has to facilitate that as well. We have to understand that learners will be attending hybrid. Some might be in the classroom, some might be attending remotely. In ACT, we're set up to deliver in a hybrid environment. So we try and make sure that all our designs are fit to do that, so that regardless of how learners are attending these sessions, they will receive the same experience. And the fourth one there is skills development, obviously a massive priority for the Welsh Assembly Government as well for us. So we try not to make any assumptions as to the level of literacy or numeracy or digital skills with our learners who are attending these sessions, but we try and provide supporting materials. So things like the glossary of terms there, any pre-teach materials, that sort of stuff as well. And as we go on and talk about our universal learning provision, you'll see the graduated approach that we take to support learners in these areas as well. And the final bubble there is ALN, additional learning needs. This is probably what we all kind of think of when we think of accessibility and inclusivity. We're thinking of, you know, additional needs for learning. PowerPoint has a massive wealth of tools and features that can help to ensure that learners with additional needs are able to engage with our resources. So we're going to dig into that quite a bit as we move through today as well. So jumping straight in, then I suppose I want to, I guess, explain why we take the fully bilingual approach. The reason for that essentially is that Wales is a bilingual nation. Some of our learners do speak Welsh as a first language, and the vast majority of learners do have some level of Welsh, even if it's, you know, your very, you know, basic ones, araf on the roads, saying slow over training, SRF platform, all of those sorts of things that, you know, people hear as they travel through Wales. So essentially we're taking this approach because we're ensuring that we cater for learners regardless of their language preference. This is all about inclusivity, right? So it's all about promoting the Welsh language, promoting Welsh culture, and giving the learners the opportunity to learn and see the Welsh language holistically. So they'll just see it around our centres, and they'll see it again, obviously, on our learning designs. So, you know, this is kind of going above and beyond the requirements, you know, Welsh Government requirements of learning design, but we think it's important, and this is the attack that we take for inclusivity. Obviously, there are some considerations there. I guess probably the first thing that a lot of you are thinking when you're looking at this slide in particular is that is a lot of text on one slide, and traditionally way more than you would generally have, I suppose. So we kind of have to bear that in mind, that if we are taking this approach, then we do have to mitigate that. So you can see we're using the two different colours, so it should be very clear for the learners, for the attendees, which side of the board that they're living in, if you like. We use quite large fonts. We try and make sure that, you know, the text is clear, so that's doing nice sort of spaced out text as well. So yeah, that kind of mitigates the amount of text on the screen. Another consideration, I suppose, to take here is that most of the learners are only going to look at their preferred language. You know, they're going to live either on the left or the right of the screen. So it's, I guess, the name of the game here is encouraging people to look at the Welsh language side of it there, and, you know, that we can do that by using incidental Welsh or reading key terms from that side of the slides to just help encourage learners to spend a little bit more time there and to engage in the Welsh language areas. I suppose another consideration there is that, you know, if we're using things like images or flowcharts, some of that is only going to include one language. Obviously, you know, you can see that with the Cymraeg logo there. Obviously, we're only using Welsh. There are a vast array of illustration software and imaging software out there that you can edit these graphics and stuff. But I would say a lot of the time, it's probably fine to have one language. You know, what we'll often do is offer a paper version in the alternate language, or, you know, we'll say this slide is available in Welsh if needed. But yeah, things like flowcharts, they can be problematic. So it's all about, I suppose, considering the best way to present this information. And if a flowchart is the best way, then you have to make those considerations, right? And I suppose the big consideration to take into account here is that this, you know, we're quite fortunate that we're able to do this. Translation can be a difficult thing to achieve for a lot of organisations. We're very lucky to have a Welsh specialist in our team who does a lot of the Welsh language for us, and we do have access to a translation service as well, which is, you know, we pay for that. There are free options though. Obviously, Microsoft and Google both have pretty decent translation software, but it can go very wrong. I'm sure we've all seen the road sign that's actually someone's out of office. You know, so it's always worth having it checked where possible if you are using translation software. Again, Microsoft and Google are good. Something that I imagine a lot of you are talking about already is ChatGPT. ChatGPT is also pretty good at translating. Obviously, because it's a AI voice model, it's designed to mimic a human voice, so it can be a little bit more conversational. It can be a little better at picking up the meaning behind what you're trying to express, whereas, you know, Google and Microsoft will pick out the words and translate that very well. ChatGPT can be a little bit better at understanding what you're trying to get across and translating it to suit, if that kind of makes sense. There are also there's Hello Blord. I don't know if any of you have come across that, but Hello Blord is another translation service. It's free. It's put out by the Welsh Government, and it's I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's limits you to 500 words a month that you can send through, and they've got a team of translators there that will translate that for you for free of charge. When I've used it before, they've come back and asked questions. You know, is it a conversational tone? Are you trying to be more formal? Did you mean it like this? And so that's a really great service, and you know, 500 words would cover this entire presentation. So you know, what I'll do at the very end of the presentation today, I'm going to leave you with a QR code and a link that will send you to Hello Broads and a bunch of other links that we're talking about today. So I guess what we can do then, what would be nice is if I can just show you a couple of things here. So I can demonstrate now what we do to present bilingual information appropriately. What you will have seen already in the previous slides is how we do the fade animations. So we try and make sure, obviously, one way that we mitigate the amount of text on the screen is that we fade it in gradually throughout, and obviously we make sure that the Welsh and the English is coming out together. So I'll just very quickly show you how to do that. Bear with me, I'll just drag this over. So let's do a new slide here. We'll zoom in. So if we do English on this side, Welsh on this side, and you can see I will just add a few bullet points here. So let's say good morning, good afternoon, and good night. And then over here on the Welsh side, we'll do bullet points again. We'll say bore da, prynhawn da, nos da. And what we want to do obviously is add some animations here. So if I go to animations, and we'll fade these in, and you can see they'll come up one at a time already, and there'll be the 1, 2, 3 coming up next to it. And we'll do that again on the Welsh side as well, and that should come up 4, 5, 6. So what that'll mean is that when we run this element, it's going to come out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is obviously not what we would like. So the way to fix that, to make sure that we're giving the Welsh and the English coming out at the same time and giving it sort of equal standing, is we can open up the animation pane here. And as you can see on the right hand side then, and I'll drag this out, you can drop them down and you can see where the animations are. So very simple, what we want to do is just match them up. So number 4 here, bore da, if I drag that up underneath good morning, and there's a drop down menu here, and we'll do start with previous, and that means that will come out now at the same time. So we can do that again with prynhawn da and good afternoon, start with previous, and nos da is already below good night, so we'll just do start with previous there. And now, nice and simple, if we run that, you can see the Welsh and the English coming out at the same time. So again, very simple stuff, but it does make a real difference in terms of how professional it looks when it comes out. And again, it's obviously giving equal importance to the Welsh and the English at the same time there. So pretty simple stuff. Something that I think is pretty exciting is what we can do on Microsoft 365. So with PowerPoint on 365, there are a few different features with PowerPoint on 365. So the really useful one here, so this is just an exemplar presentation that I've put together. If you go to slideshow here, then you can see you've got subtitles options. We want to make sure that always use subtitles is ticked. And then with the drop-down menu, you can change your spoken language to whatever language you're speaking. So let's say English, but then you can change your subtitle language. If we scroll all the way down, then we've got Welsh at the bottom. So when we present that now, it's start subtitles, and it should just begin giving these subtitles in Welsh. And there it goes. So I don't know if there's any Welsh speakers in the room, but when we've used this before, the translations are pretty good. They're not perfect. You know, you're never going to get perfect. And obviously, if I'm, you know, speaking really quickly, if I'm, you know, reciting Busta Rhymes lyrics, then it's not necessarily going to pick everything up very well. But by and large, it's pretty good. And it's quite an impressive little tool that, again, like we here in ACT, we've recently had a bit of an influx of Ukrainian learners, and quite amazingly, it does have Ukrainian as an option as well. So we've been able to use this to, you know, present to our Ukrainian learners who are learning English. So those are just two tools that we use to sort of help present Welsh and give that the importance that it needs, really. So let's jump back in. So I guess moving on from Welsh, then moving on from inclusivity, let's get into accessibility a little bit more. I kind of mentioned earlier our graduated approach. So here in ACT, what we do is we have our universal learning provision. So the idea is that when we're designing for learning, we are designing to meet the needs of most learners. So where possible, we embed support for additional learning needs. So we do that in a number of ways, which I'll go through in a moment. But the idea is that most of our learners will be fully covered by the universal learning provision. Any support that they might need, most of it should be in there as standard. Above and beyond that, we have our targeted support. A lot of that is, I guess, when we know that a large amount of learners regularly need extra support in these areas. This is often literacy, numeracy, digital skills. Then we have fail safes in place. We do things like our glossary of terms maybe, and that sort of stuff to target those extra areas. And then finally, we have specialist support, which is highly personalized for learners with additional needs, to support them. So essentially, it just helps ensure that we're making the most of our additional learning need provision by ensuring accessibility and inclusion are considered from the offset for most of our learners. So we do that by concentrating on accessibility. We try and enable participation and engagement across the board, and we do that by reducing barriers and focus on our design. So I'm just going to go into that in a little bit more depth here for you. So when we're talking about universal learning design, we can break that down into these sort of 3 words, really. So when we're talking about universal, what we're saying here is that the curriculum is suitable for everyone, regardless of your background, regardless of strengths, interests, different needs. Obviously, that comes with a caveat, which brings us to the next word, learning. Learning can never be a one-size-fits-all approach. We can do broad brushstrokes to try and support, the vast majority of our learners, but people learn things in different ways. Learning, is very individual by its very nature. So it's bearing that in mind whilst we're trying to make this universal approach, and we tie that together with our design. So we try and make sure that it's flexible, that it's accommodating for all kinds of learners, that it's challenging and engaging for everyone in the room, regardless of different needs. So the idea here is that designing for those in the margins means that it just works better for everybody. So if we consider things like subtitles, like closed captions, obviously these are designed to benefit people with hearing impairments, but they will also help people who are learning English. They'll also help people in gyms, people with young babies who are napping in the pram next to the TV while you're trying to watch the latest episodes of The Traitors. Oddly personal, but there you go. Again, like if we think of things like ramps are obviously, again, they're designed for people with mobility issues, but they help people who are using prams, they help people who are using trolleys or sack trucks, people on bikes. So that's the kind of concept of universal learning design. But because it's learning, we have to take it a little bit further than just access, because we have to encompass support and challenge and these sorts of areas as well. So we can break that down then into the principles of universal learning design. So when we're designing for learning, we have kind of got to consider 2 questions. So it's, what are the goals and what are the barriers? And we do that by looking at these 3 principles. So the first one there, that I've been happy and clicked already, is representation. What we mean by representation in this context is that we should be presenting our content in multiple media where possible. So we do that with varied supports to help people engage with the learning designs. So this is things like using animation, for instance, so making sure that we're slowly eking out the information like I've been doing with you today. Use of graphics to support, use of images. The idea is we're activating background knowledge. So I'm trying to bring this back to you in your workplace here. That's activating your background knowledge, contextualizing the learning. Use of vocabulary, so not shying away from using jargon or using larger vocabulary, regardless of the audience. We will use glossaries and stuff to support that rather than shy away from it. essentially the idea is that we're giving the learners every chance possible to gain a good understanding of what's being taught and being mindful of any additional needs or preferred learning styles. The next principle then is action and expression. Excuse me. So that kind of comes the other way. So this is about giving the students the option for expressing what they know and expressing what they've learned, and whilst supporting them to do so. So applies especially to facilitating assessments or learning activities, any sort of interaction within these sessions. So where appropriate, we try and give the learners the option to complete assessments in the format of their choice, whilst providing support to do so. So this has been proven to help learners gain higher achievement, but also it maintains their engagement in the learning as well, which brings us to the final principle nicely, which is engagement. So in this context, we're talking about keeping diverse groups of learners engaged. Obviously, the way that we do that is providing different options to keep their interest, providing challenges to learners, and giving them the opportunity to fail. You know, and get back on that horse. So providing those challenges, letting them make those mistakes and let them persist with overcoming those mistakes. This is how we learn. You know, that's a great way of keeping those learners engaged and giving them the opportunity to work hard to achieve what they're trying to achieve. And so it's about thinking outside the box. Obviously, that's a necessary skill when it comes to designing for learning in any case, I think. So it's trying to provide fun but applicable challenges as part of the delivery there. Again, I suppose the bottom line here then is that we need to remove the barriers that are caused by the curriculum and keep the challenge where they belong. If we take anything away from that, I think that's a nice way of summing up what universal learning design is. Okay, so some of the practical things that we do when we're designing our learning. First of all, we talk about font size, spacing, and color. We've talked about this a little bit already today, but you know, I guess this should be quite specific, and it might change from organization to organization. You'll have your branding guidelines to bear in mind. So, you know, I'm not telling everybody, right, black for English, purple for Welsh. It's whatever works for you guys, but that's how we do it. And we try and have no more than 5 words on a line and no more than 7 words on a slide. And obviously, we're, you know, with the Welsh and English approach, that still does come to quite a lot of text. But I would say that that's probably a good rule of thumb anyway, for regardless of whether you're doing the bilingual approach or not, because, you know, chances are if you weren't having the Welsh over here, you might have an image. So it's good to keep the text over on one side. We try and make the spacing always consistent. So throughout the presentation, you know, sizes and you know, areas of text might change, but the spacing in between will stay consistent. Again, we use black and purple to differentiate. It helps just make the text pop out, really. So use of tables. Oops. Tables, I suppose, that's an interesting one, because tables can be quite problematic when it comes to accessibility if you consider a screen reader. So if someone who's attending your session is using a screen reader because they're, you know, visually impaired or such, then the screen reader, when it comes to a table, is automatically going to read it in a certain way. Obviously, the point of using a table is that you can talk through the table and you can see, right, over here on this side, then, you know, there's this information, over here there's this information. But a screen reader is just going to go, if we think of it in terms of an Excel spreadsheet, then it's going to go, you know, A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3, C1, C2, C3. It's not going to give the option to disseminate the text properly. So a lot of the advice is to just kind of avoid tables where possible, but often tables are the best way to present information. So what I would say is that any object that you put in, any image, any tables, anything like that, you can add alt text to. I'm going to go into alt text in a bit more depth in a moment. But alt text is something that you can add to these tables to explain what you're trying to get across. So if there is someone who's visually impaired, they would hear the alt text, which would explain what you're trying to explain with this table. So that's one way to kind of get around that. Presenting information in different formats. This is something we have touched on a little bit, but again, the idea here is that it allows us to play to different learning styles and meet different learner needs. So giving pre-teach materials, giving lesson summaries, things like that can be really helpful for accessibility. And finally, images for understanding. I think, you know, we've probably all seen PowerPoint presentations where, you know, they come up with this quite high level information, and then for no reason at all, there's a reindeer with a bobble hat and a scarf on the other side of the screen. And you know, using images is lovely and all. They need to be used to aid understanding, and they're not just there to pretty up a slide. You know, it's been proven that, you know, adding an appropriate image will help learners retain that information and to engage with your content. So as long as they're included to support that content, then images are really, really useful things. But if they're not there to support the content, then it's just a waste of everybody's time. So let's talk about alt text then. So the purpose of alt text is for people who can't see the screen. Screen readers, again, will read alt text aloud. So often it's the only information that many people have about the image. I will say, as a caveat, we have to be very mindful with alt text that we are providing screen readers that will read Welsh and English. If you are taking a bilingual approach, then there are excuse me, screen reader software out there that will do Welsh and English. We use Claro Read and Write, which I've included a link at the end as well to that. And that's a really good one that will pick up the Welsh and English and read it very well for those learners who require it. So I'm just going to demonstrate to you then with this one how we go about with alt text. Very simple stuff, really. You can see we've added 3 images here. What I'm going to do is, if I just right click one of these images, we can click edit alt text down here. And this one, actually, we clicked to generate a description for me, and it found Cardiff Castle, so it knew that this was Cardiff Castle. So that was generated by PowerPoint. This one, it didn't pick up Aberystwyth Pier at night, so we wrote that in. But again, when a screen reader's reading that, then it'll say Cardiff Castle, Aberystwyth Pier at night. You can see this one here, this little graphic in the middle. Perhaps we don't want the screen reader to pay any attention to that. Maybe it's just there for decorative purposes. So we can click mark as decorative and it won't come up. Okay, simple as that, really. That's kind of alt text. But yeah, very simple to do, and really it's very useful. It's a good thing to have as standard, and so that you've got it when you need it, rather than needing it and you don't have it. So the other thing that we can look at then is the check accessibility tool. This is a really, really useful tool, and it's over here. So up in the ribbon at the top, if you go to review, you've probably all gone here for spell check. Just 2 over, you've got check accessibility. So it says there, check accessibility, keep it inclusive. Let us make sure that your file follows accessibility best practices, blah, blah, blah. So if I click that, I'll get rid of the alt text, but you can see it comes up, it inspects the entire presentation, and it tells me what errors there are. And so down here, it'll tell us why we should fix and how to fix. Okay, so this one, you can see we're missing alternative text on one of the images. Coincidentally, it's the slide that we're on. So again, it just tells me that why I should fix it and how to do it. Right click the object, edit alt text. If it's meaningful, type a description. So I'm just going to do that quickly and just type in vector graphic. If I can type, of a man demonstrating accessibility tools. And now that's got rid of that error there because I've fixed it. The other thing it's telling me to do is to check the reading order. So the reason for that is because, again, the alt text, and particularly with the approach, the bilingual approach that we're taking, it's important. Any text on the slide, PowerPoint is just going to read it in the order that you decide. If you don't do it, then it's just going to read it in a random order a lot of the time. So if I click on slide 1, then you can see what we need to do, and it does tell you how to do it here, but I'll just close this so we can see it properly. If we go to home and go to select, then we can click the selection pane here, and that shows us the order that it's going to read stuff. So it's going to start off with this, which should be, that's to do with an animation, so it's not actually a real thing. So that's marked as decorative, you can see. And then it's going to give us that one, which I don't want it to tell us that first. So I'm going to drag that to the bottom. And then it's got our English title and English subtitle, so that's great. Then the Welsh title and the Welsh subtitle. So that's the order that I want it to do. I want it to ignore that first picture that is, read me the English title, read me the English subtitle, read me the Welsh title, read me the Welsh subtitle, and then explain that there's a QR code to the glossary of terms. Okay, so that's something, again, doesn't take long, but it's really useful to have it rather than not have it and need it. Okay, so I can't remember if there's any more. Let's just have a look one more time. Right, so down here at the bottom, so there's one more tip, and that's duplicate slide title. So it's telling me that we've got 2 slides that are named the same. So why is it worried about that? So it's telling me that we should fix that because those who can't view the slides can still easily navigate to the information. If they've got the same title, it's hard for people to find the correct slide. Fair enough, really, I think. So, you know, we want to change that then from think accessibility to, you know, whatever we want to change it to. Okay, so nice and simple, really. But I think that's some really useful stuff there that you can kind of play with. So how are we doing for time? Pretty good. So, right, where are we? Right, okay, so yeah, I'm just going to go through, because we have got a little bit of time, I'm just going to go through some considerations that we take when we're delivering or when we're designing for e-learning. Obviously, e-learning is a separate approach. You know, we do have to treat it quite differently than a taught tutor-led delivery. But I'm not going to, I guess, go into too much detail on this. You know, I can always come back if you want me, but I think we can do a little sort of play with it for now. Just find it. So here we are. So this is, excuse me, one of the most recent courses that we've developed at the moment, and it's our induction for our Jobs Growth Wales Plus learners. So these again are learners who are sort of 16 to 19. They're, you know, quite often disengaged with education, so they come to us for training programs. So you can see the sort of topics that we're delivering here for these learners in induction. I'm going to demonstrate a little bit of the well-being one. So what we do, you can see we've got the glossary of terms here. We've got the option to complete it in English or Welsh if they want. There's a toggle button there. And again, very sort of large text in both English and Welsh, differentiating with colours, much like we've shown you already. If I click into the English, you can see that there's there is a toggle button. They can go back, they can change to Welsh at any time. I've muted this now, but obviously you would be able to hear the presenter there. You can see we've got subtitles embedded in. So as they go through, if I just show the controls, I'll just skip forward to show you. So as they move through, you can see that they'll pop up with little links. So there's a link to the Wellbeing website. So that's a sort of, I guess, showing them this is where you can get extra support if you need it. If I just skip to the end there, whoops, daisy. Then a continue button pops up to allow them to continue to move through. As we go through any text that you see now, there is a voiceover. Again, I've muted the tab so that I can talk over it, but there is a voiceover explaining any text as they go through. They've got a little video that they need to watch, which will take them through a mindful breathing exercise where they follow the circle expanding and contracting with their breathing. So that it takes them through that to sort of get into the mindset of mindfulness, and then it's given them options for reflection here. So this is all, again, embedding that sort of health and well-being and accessibility and inclusivity stuff there. We run through a mindfulness exercise then with name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, and so on. So again, so those are, I guess, some of the considerations that we take here. If there's anything else that I needed to mention there. Yeah, again, I suppose any graphics that you would have seen in that or have alt text as well, we try and take the same approach with the use of text. We try and make it as large as we can, but we do use voiceovers as well to support just in case. So yeah, so I guess that's kind of what I wanted to present to you, really. If you wanted to dig more into this, we do have a course in ACT. So it's a diploma for digital learning practitioners, where we kind of go into a lot more detail on a lot of this stuff. So the course it's a level 3 apprenticeship, so it's fully funded, so there'd be no cost to yourselves or for your employers if it's something that you did want to do. And I guess it's for learning practitioners who are looking to improve their digital delivery. So it's helps to, I guess, guide you through creating effective and engaging digital resources for learning, with a real focus on inclusivity and accessibility. Also, I guess, a massive focus on pedagogy, as opposed to, we see a lot of the trap falling into the trap of using digital for digital's sake. So this course will go through several theories and approaches to learning in a digital world, and blended learning and all of that sort of stuff. But focuses a lot on the practical elements which you can use in your delivery immediately. And that's kind of the idea of the course. So there's a big focus, as I said, on accessibility and inclusivity, because obviously these are vital considerations for learning design. So as part of that course, there's a number of talk workshops that you'll be encouraged to attend. So you'll get an introduction to digital tools, which we'll go through some of the available software and hardware, different tools that you could use to support learning. There's a workshop on crafted teaching and active learning. So this is where you'll explore different teaching methodologies and things like constructivism and active learning there, as well as applying those theories to your digital learning environment. Then you've got the digital delivery project. So that looks at project management, but it also goes into things like user experience design, which is absolutely vital, I think, in terms of learning. So it's all about working through a digital learning design project and considering the learner experience as you move through it. And the fourth and final workshop that you're asked to attend is immersive technology. So that looks at mixed realities. It looks at VR, AR, all of these sorts of tools that are becoming much more accessible, financially and otherwise. So as I've kind of mentioned, those workshops are all delivered in a hybrid approach. But if you'd like to come into Centre, we have got our brand spanking new digital suite. So here's where you'll get the opportunity to try out some of these tools that you'll be learning about. You can see in the picture there's our swanky 3D printer, and there's also obviously all the VR and all of that sort of stuff in there as well. I guess one of the real benefits of this course from my perspective, and we've had my team have done this qualification as well. One of the big benefits is that you have a monthly meeting with a digital learning coach. So you'll meet with your assessor, who's an expert in digital learning and digital learning design, who can help you progress through the qualification, but also help discuss how to implement what you're learning into your own workplace and into your own delivery. So as I said, it's a level 3 apprenticeship. It's fully funded. There's no cost to the learner or to the employer or anything like that. So on this final link, which I'll leave you with now, and again, I'll paste the link in the chat as well in just a second. But here on this link, you'll find a lot more information. I put the course outline for the Digital Learning Practitioner's qualification, as well as all the other qualifications that ACT offer, as well as some useful links and information that we've gone through today as well. So that's kind of me, really. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks so much. Oh, Sam, that was great. Really, you did what it said on the tin, is what I wrote down just now. You promised us a practical approach this morning. I've been writing notes all the way through. I do quite a lot of delivery online since COVID, and there are a few things there that I've certainly learnt from you this morning, and I'm sure others will share with that. Really taken at how you opened the session with those 5 badges, and really made me think, really, because I think we tend to, don't we? We jump into that ALM category straight away, and I was quite interested to see how you had that health and well-being at the centre of that, and I think we often forget that. And it was interesting to see latterly then when you were going through the mindfulness, etc., on that course there, and it's something for us to think about. It's not enough just to transpose something from face to face to being online. Really interesting to have a look at that, and very interested in the course that you've mentioned as well. I'll remember your walking reindeer, so with the images that I tend to use, that they need to be there for a purpose, and that's a really important point, as well as that accessibility tab. I've seen it there, but I've never used it. So thank you. I'll be putting that straight into practice today. So thanks so much. Loads of presentation practice that you've put in there. So thank you for everything that you've done to make this such a fab session this morning. I know many of us will be able to put our own new skills into practice after today. And I've got something I'm doing tomorrow, which I'm going to have a little look at myself this afternoon. So diolch yn fawr iawn I ti, Sam. Super session this morning, and thanks for your willingness in joining the CIPD L&D network. So we will post this, as I say, onto our LinkedIn group and to those who've signed up to come along to this morning for them to see. Bit unfortunate, half term this week, so we haven't had the numbers this morning that we were expecting, but we will share that widely with those who've sent their apologies. So diolch yn fawr iawn I ti.